As we just discussed, the state's highest court today ruled that congressional districts should be redrawn by the Independent Redistricting Commission, therefore effectively handing ultimate control of the process, possibly back to the state legislature. Joining us with a different perspective on the decision is Ed Cox, chair of the Republican State Committee. Welcome back, Ed. Good to see you.
It's good to see you, Susan, as always.
So you must be disappointed in this decision. What's your take?
Well, the take is that the present maps have not been challenged by the petitioners, by the Democrats, or by the court itself. So the present maps are constitutional. They are not gerrymandered. They are well done by the special master. Now they're saying, just as a procedural matter, the court is saying it's got to go through this process, which ultimately could give the legislature a shot to re-gerrymander everything. That would be against the Constitution, which forbids gerrymandered maps. And the problem here is the way this court got put together, the way the Senate, in an unprecedented way, refused the nomination of the governor. The way they forced out
Hector LaSalle.
They forced out the prior chief judge, and they insisted on putting in their chief judge. And that had never happened before. And then this chief judge, when Judge Halligan recused herself, he, rather than just going ahead with 6 judges, he insisted on changing the precedent and putting in a judge of his choice, who in fact had already ruled on this issue in the Nichols case.
That's right.
So
Rowan Wilson.
The whole process here by which our Court of Appeals was restructured is unprecedented, and it really diminishes our Court of Appeals, what the Democrats in Albany did set up.
As you say, Rowan Wilson replaced Caitlin Halligan, who recused herself, with somebody from a state Supreme Court appellate division judge. Now, do you think any of this is actionable? Is this something, all of these different twists and turns coming up, replacing all of these judges and making exceptions, do you think that this is something that the GOP could take action on legally?
Ultimately, if in fact this goes to the legislature and the legislature gerrymanders away as they want to do here, that's the whole purpose of all what they have done to discredit one of the most prestigious common law courts in the world, the Court of Appeals of the state of New York. And what they did to do that, if they did that just so they could re-gerrymander the maps, if they do that, we're right back in court, going up to the Court of Appeals, challenging it under the provisions of the Constitution.
Since the Republican majority in the House is just 8 seats, and balance of power in that chamber could be entirely determined here in New York. So if these maps do stay, the ones that the IRC are supposed to be creating before February 28th, what does that mean for the 2024 elections, especially in districts that Biden carried in New York?
Well, presently what it means is there's complete confusion. On a purely procedural issue, this court, restructured by the Democrats in Albany in a way that discredits this court, the process here going forward, it will go through a process where there will be a new map produced, and that map is re-gerrymandered by the legislature, then it will be challenged.
So, looking at this practically as a political reporter, I read Cook political reports. They list several key races as in upstate New York as well as on Long Island that could be won by Democrats this time if there is not a good Republican showing. It's all dependent. So the fact is that Republicans are going to have to spend a lot of money. How do you decide where the GOP chooses to spend its cash when there are so many possibilities?
Well, the initial problem here is their confusion. From now through the 28th and maybe afterwards for a period of time, while there's maybe another case going up with respect to the maps the legislature makes.
Sure.
There will be confusion. No one will know what their district is. Challengers who want to challenge. we have competitive districts now, and the court should have kept those competitive districts. And between now and February 28th and for time thereafter, no one will know what their map is. The present members won't know what area they have to address and address needs of, and challengers will not know what they should do. So this court has discredited itself by creating confusion on maps that no one has challenged. Not even the Democrats have challenged the present maps as being unconstitutional or wrong, because they are very competitive. There are 9 very competitive seats here. The Brennan Center has said we have more competitive seats in New York than any other major state. That is good. Competition is good. The Democrats here would rather cheat than compete.
So this is by no means over. We have been speaking with Ed Cox, chair of the New York Republican State Committee. It's always good to see you, Ed. Thank you.
Good to talk to you, Susan.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall, where we are turning back to the redistricting process. Yesterday, the State Court of Appeals ordered the redrawing of New York's congressional maps ahead of next year's pivotal elections. The state's independent redistricting commission now has until February 28th to draw up new lines. The boundaries could play a key role in whether Republicans maintain control of the House of Representatives next year. Joining me now to talk about all of this is someone very close to the issue. John Faso is a former New York Republican congressman, and he has been closely involved in the initial lawsuit that challenged the lines drawn by Democrats. Welcome back to the program. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Bobby.
Well, this ruling yesterday was sort of a worst case scenario for Republicans because it gives Democrats another bite at the apple, another chance to redraw the district lines in their favor. I guess first, what was your reaction when you heard about the ruling?
Well, I was very disappointed, but I wasn't surprised. It's very evident the way in which this scenario had unfolded that the Democrats may have frankly put their finger on the scale of justice here. It's the decision and the dissent very clearly said that this was political. And that was coming from Justice Canataro, who wrote the dissent. It was a 4-3 decision. They basically have gutted the intent of the 2014 constitutional amendment, which was to limit the power of the legislature. And Bobby, think about this. This lawsuit, they've never contended that the lines that were drawn by the outside expert appointed by the court last year, that there was any infirmity, legal or constitutional infirmity with those lines. There was no such allegation. And in fact, the districts that we have for Congress in New York State are the most competitive number of districts of any state in the country. There are 9 legitimate competitive districts. And what the Democrats, Hakeem Jeffries and Mike Gianaris and the rest of the Democrats in Albany want to do, they basically don't want the voters to pick who represents us in Congress from New York State. They want to decide this in the back rooms of Albany and Washington so they can rig these lines in their favor. Look, they were slapped down last year with an egregious gerrymander that the court called them on. New York, unlike other states, has a very explicit prohibition against partisan gerrymandering. And basically, this is the Democrats' effort to win elections in the map drawing room and not at the ballot box. And I think it's really a tragedy for the people of the state.
And obviously, New York Democrats have their eye on a number of these battleground districts, 5 of them that are held by Republicans, including a couple of them on Long Island. Is the concern on the part of Republicans that this will make it easier for Democrats to now flip those seats and turn them blue?
Well, we expect that's what they'll try. But, you know, the constitutional prohibition against gerrymandering still exists. And if they do that, I would anticipate that we'll wind up back in court again. And the thing is that the Constitution is supposed to protect us against this. And look, I'm the first to tell you that when Republicans have unfettered power over redistricting, they abuse the power. And when Democrats have unfettered power over it, they abuse it. And so no side has complete virtue here. But the difference is New York has an explicit prohibition, says you can't draw lines or districts to favor one party or candidate over the other. And that's the game the Democrats want to play. And unfortunately, Judge Wilson and the way this court was organized, with a judge recused herself, and they brought in a judge who was the presiding judge of the First Department from the Bronx. And it was very evident. She had already ruled in an aspect on this case. So she had already stated a position on an integral part of the dispute that was decided in the court yesterday. She should have never been brought in, but that's what Judge Wilson did. And look, go back to a year ago when they defeated Judge Hector LaSalle for the chief judge position. It was never about abortion or labor rights. It was always about this case. The Democrats have been trying to manipulate the legal system and the court system. And yesterday, unfortunately, I think they succeeded. And it's not just me that says it. There are a lot of people, independent observers, that say something really stinks to high heaven in what the court did yesterday.
In terms of the process, though, the maps, at least initially, are going to be drawn by this independent redistricting commission, which is as things are set out in state law, right? So what's the harm in that? I mean, Democrats argue that that's the process that we're supposed to have here in New York.
You know, Bobby, I never heard of people clanging pots and pans in the street, demanding that we have the Independent Redistricting Commission come back to fix something that the Court of Appeals fixed last year. Again, the Democrats got caught red-handed, violating the Constitution. The court said they had to fix it. That was the only recourse. And only after the Democrats saw the lines that the outside expert drew, again, lines which create more competitive districts than in any other state in the nation, only after they saw them did they bring this case in mid-June last year, which was well beyond the statute of limitations for bringing this type of mandamus action. And yet the court twisted itself into a constitutional pretzel to try to justify this. It's really an outrage.
So talk about the timeline here, because there's not a lot of time between now and the primary elections and, of course, the general elections next year. And we're already in February under this court order when the maps would have to be drawn. And then after that, they have to go to the legislature. There might be litigation. I mean, how's there even time for this process to get done?
Well, there may not be time. And again, if the Democrats attempt to gerrymander the state unconstitutionally, we will certainly sue about that. And look, this is not in the public interest. Candidates for office, the incumbents, but more importantly, the voters of our state don't know what district and who will be representing them in Congress because of this backroom dealing that unfortunately the court allowed them to do yesterday. So I anticipate the independent commission will meet. Frankly, they should be working off the current lines. Those are still the law in our state. They should work off that. And if there are some changes that need to be made that can be justified, that's one thing. But if they try to rig the game again, and like they did when they took Nicole Maliotakis's district up to Park Slope, and they did all sorts of other crazy things, the Long Island Shore district that went from Suffolk up to the Connecticut line in Westchester. These are the outrageous things that the Democrats did. And here you listen to them talking about, like Hakeem Jeffries, oh, the Republicans, they're a threat to democracy. Well, right here in New York State, guess who's the threat to democracy? It's the Democratic Party.
And, you know, because your side won the case last year as far as the Democratic drawn maps and having drawn them unconstitutionally, it seems like that will give them some pause, right? I mean, this time around, they can't draw the lines anywhere near the way that they were drawn the last time around. So it seems like just by virtue of that ruling that you guys secured, they can't be gerrymandered too much, right? I mean, they have to stay within the bounds of the law.
That's right. And let's have an open, transparent process. Let the independent commission go to work based on the existing maps that we have. And if there are proposed changes that people feel are justified and warranted, then let's hear about it. Let's do it transparently. Let's not do it in the back rooms. But you know what? The Democrats already have the map drawn that they want to impose. And this process, in many respects, is just going to be window dressing because of what the court allowed yesterday. And so, again, if they try to violate the Constitution, we'll be there to meet them in court.
And a lot of eyes will be on that process. All right, John Faso, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much.
All right, I am going to talk more about all of this when I'm joined by our politics panel straight ahead. Stay with us.